Hello, my name is Tamara Toy, and this is my last screencast for the spring 2017 semester of ATM 101. We're doing units 13 and 14. And for this, we are compiling climate information from Anchorage and Eielson. And Anchorage, you can see here, is a maritime climate as it sits off the Gulf of Alaska, and Eielson is a continental climate as it sits well inland. Here we have the station data for Anchorage and Eielson from January 30th to February 5th. Both stations recorded rather warm weather for the 31st of January, even though Anchorage was much warmer and much more above the mean. If you look at the dew point is consistent with the temperatures for both stations, and if you look at the relative humidity for Anchorage, it's much more erratic, where if you look at Eielson, it's much more consistent. This has to do with the difference in climate, as Eielson is a much drier climate and there's just not as much fluctuation with the relative humidity. So here we have the weather map for Tuesday, January 31st, 2017. We can see that there's a low pressure system sitting off of Anchorage, part of a stationary front. We have high pressure over southwest Alaska and over Canada, with a ridge over Eielson. This would be very consistent and explain the warm temperatures. Anchorage was getting a onshore flow, which it could explain for the warmer temperatures, and explain also why Eielson had warmer temperatures but not as far above normal as Anchorage saw. So for Saturday, February 4th, 2017, the low pressures deepen and the fronts become occluded as it slides off to the east. And the entire state is enjoying, for this day, high pressure. Light winds, low clouds, not much going on. So here's the map and GOES images for that date. And you can see here for the infrared that there's very few clouds, as well as with the visible and rather dry air with the water vapor. Here we have the 500 millibar air chart. This is an average for the time period, or a mean. If you look, Anchorage and Eielson is on the 515, 520 decameter contour. What this tells us is that the jet stream was not consistent, that it moved around quite a bit. There's a lot of where this reflects with the weather statewide, as we saw, extremely warm and extremely cold in this time period. So now we have the station data for Anchorage and Eielson for March 2017, from March 20th to March 26th. You can see Anchorage was much more consistent and closer to their mean temperature. Eielson was showing extremely cold weather, way below the average for this time period. Again, the pressure for both stations is similar, although with different readings. With Anchorage, you can look at the dew point and the relative humidity, and it's consistent with the temperature. Whereas with Eielson, they're almost opposite. The dew point is consistent with the temperature, where the relative humidity is not. This has a lot to do with again, the differences in climates. Anchorage is a maritime, a lot more humidity, a lot more moisture in the air. So here we have the map for Tuesday, March 21st, 2017. There is a stationary front south of Anchorage with a weak low pressure over Canada and a stronger one sitting way south in the Gulf of Alaska. High pressure is the bigger influence for Eielson than it is for Anchorage. But here we have clear skies and light winds. So Saturday, March 25th, 2017, we had a similar situation where the lows deepened and the fronts turned to an occluded front. It's moving off. The high pressure slid over towards the northwest of Alaska, and again, it's leaving us with very clear skies and much, much colder air. Oh, here's the map and GOES images from March 21st, 2017. Again, you can, few clouds in here. But the interesting thing is here with the water vapor, you can see right where those low pressure sits. And the moisture coming up into the state. So here's the 500 millibar upper air chart for March. If you look, our areas that we're discussing are sitting to 540 to 530 decameter contours. And what this tells us is not only the contours closer together, but just the contours, the data itself is saying that we had a very strong jet stream from March, and it was persistent and didn't move around much, and that's why we were consistently colder than normal for it seemed like the entire month of March. So here we have the monthly average temperatures for Fairbanks and Anchorage. You can look and see that the average temperatures they're fairly consistent between Anchorage and Fairbanks, with the major exception is that the range of temperatures for Fairbanks is much greater than for Anchorage. If you look at the average high, average, and average low alone, for Anchorage they're much tighter. And then when you add in the record high and record low, that spreads it out even more for Fairbanks. This is pretty consistent with the fact that Anchorage has, again, a lot more moisture that kind of helps keep things a little bit more moderate and temperature-wise, as well. With Fairbanks being farther north, it's going to more than likely feel the effects of any changes in the jet stream, just like with March when we had the very strong jet stream. How much that affected Eielson, much more than Anchorage. So to wrap this up, when it comes to climate change and talking about Anchorage or Eielson, the biggest differences to me is that Anchorage is maritime weather. So they're going to be affected by rising sea levels, rising water temperatures, and also the effects of melting glaciers. Eielson, with it being continental, the effects aren't going to be as dramatic. River levels I could foresee rising with the rising ocean levels. You have melting permafrost, which is a major issue in the interior. And also with it being continental and closer to the jet stream, the temperature extremes could be greater for Eielson. I would say overall, I would say Anchorage would probably see more of a direct effect from climate change than Eielson immediately, at least. Not to say that Eielson would be without any effects. I think that the biggest difference is that it's going to be more immediate in Anchorage, and it's going to be a lot more dramatic in Anchorage than Eielson. As well, maritime climate, as far as the environment goes, are always much more, or usually more fragile than someplace inland. So I would say, bottom line is that Anchorage would feel the effects much more strongly than Eielson, on the immediate level at least. So that should wrap up my last screencast. I've enjoyed the class, and I hope everybody has a fantastic summer that hopefully isn't super hot like last year.